So I'm here on Borderlands 2. Blue here, if you didn't know. And we're gonna be playing through my quest line on Borderlands 2. As you can see, sorry. As you can see, there are tons of quests that I haven't performed yet. So yeah, we're gonna be quite busy since we gotta do all this. And it just keeps going. So yeah, we got a lot ahead of us. But before anything, I want to explain, why I've made some of the choices I've made with my character. So, let's get into it. So, you have 76 skill points, but that's kind of a fallacy. You only have 75 really, because the first skill point you saw me put into Deception. And, I can't go down any of the skill trees until I put a point into Deception. So, yeah, I only effectively have 75 points. Also, like, what is deception? Or rather, excuse me, why did I start with 0? Why didn't I use some other character? Well, simple one, really. I asked a certain person, a certain fan, what character would you like to see me do this series with? And they said 0. Plus, I've noticed he's one of the most popular characters, and, he's one of the characters I happen to have maxed out, so it just made sense. So, deception. What is deception? Well, you throw a decoy, and enemies will target it, and you'll be invisible, so, yeah. Oh, also, while you're in deception, your stats actually get boosted by what it says there. Technically, it gets boosted a bit differently than what it's written, but I'm not going to get into that. Effectively, you get 200% gun damage. I don't know what else you need to know. And the melee damage is not irrelevant either. Normally, melee damage is irrelevant in this game, but Zero is one of the only characters that, still manages to make good use of melee. It's just, melee itself isn't that good in this game. But that should show how good Zero is with melee, if he can still make it work. Okay, so we're eventually going to put points into all 3 of these skill trees because we have so many skill points. But we're going to start with this skill tree. So, fast hands. Pretty simple to explain this one. Reload speed is good. Weapon swap speed is good. And our alternative to go down the skill tree is Counter-Strike, and this skill is terrible. So, yeah. Not much to say there. Reloading your weapon, always nice, always helps. Being able to swap weapons. Now, a lot of people underrate that ability. Actually, swapping weapons is really good. But, you can mitigate reload altogether. You can swap weapons for elements. You can maybe swap for a range engagement, or maybe use a weapon for its utility purpose. I'll get into that when I get into the gear, but for now, yeah, good skill. Fearless. This skill's okay. The only problem with it is you don't want to have your shield depleted unless you're running a melee build, but if you're running a melee build, then you don't really get that, even with a melee build, there are better skills to run than this skill. So, while gun damage is great, any form of damage is great, really, and it has fire rate, which fire rate is not a useless skill. Zero just doesn't need this. Now, this is a good skill. Increases damage dealt when attacking from behind, or attacking an enemy who is targeting someone else. So the way this works is, say I had teammates, right? If the enemies are targeting my teammates, I get a 20% damage boost. Flat out, straight up. That doesn't include, that's not specific to a specific weapon type, or even a damage type, Corrosive, explosive, critical, all these things, if you get all of them in one fell swoop, this boosts all those different kinds of damage by 20%. So, It's pretty easy to say, or to see why it's so good. Oh, and you might be wondering, how are you going to trigger this skill? This skill needs to be triggered by something. Notably, enemies need to be targeting something other than you. And I'm going to be doing this playthrough solo. So how am I going to trigger it? Well, that's why you have Deception. I don't have it active right now. But normally you would throw Deception. And if this guy was an enemy, he'd target the Deception and I can get behind him. Boom, ambush. So, really good skill. Okay. So, moving down the skill tree. Rising Shot. So, this skill... I'm really conflicted about this skill. I don't know if this skill is really good or just average. But I know it's not pointless. So, the way it works, after every successful attack, you get a stack. You know what, I'll equip a weapon real quick. And I'll go down to the training dummy so you can see. So, you hit an enemy and you gain a stack, and each stack makes it so you do more damage than previous. So you'll see my stack. Now my gun's doing more damage. So, look, I'll give you a better example, right? So, that's the damage it does on one shot, right? Now if I fire it 2 times quickly, the second shot does more than the first one, right? And successfully so on until I reach 5. Once I reach 5 stacks, it gives me more and more damage. So the damage keeps ramping up, so it's not useless, it's just hard to notice the effects. But they're always active, so I would say this is a good skill, I guess. Yeah, it's a really good skill. Okay, Deathmark. This skill is, you know, just flat out fucking amazing. It might not seem that amazing, so, you know, what does it do? I'm talking about it, what does it do? So your melee attacks mark targets, and targets that have been marked take 80% extra damage. 80%. That's before even slag. Before anything. You know, it doesn't include, a lot like ambush, except this is just like 80%. Like, right. This was so good and it was 20%. This is 80% of that. That's like times 4. It's ambush times 4. Though you do have to get a melee attack. So it adds utility to your melee attack. Sometimes you'll melee an enemy not to kill him, but just to death mark him. But that's not your primary way of death marking. You'll see what I mean when I move down the skill tree, but the skill will become important. Okay, so, unforeseen. Your holographic decoy explodes, and when you become invisible... Wait, hang on. I misread that. Your holographic decoy explodes when you become visible again, dealing shock damage to nearby enemies. This skill is trash, so we're not running it in our build. Okay, actually, I should correct myself when I said that. The skill isn't complete trash. It has one purpose. But that purpose is just why. Like, you can run so many better things, so we're not running it in our build. Okay. Innervate. While Deception is active, you gain increased gun damage and movement speed, as well as regenerate health. So this is really good for different reasons. This is good for, like, say I've taken some damage after a gunfight. This is Zero's only way of recovering health. And you'll see I move a little bit faster. It's not a lot faster, but it's not nothing either. Most of the time you'll use decoy to either damage an enemy or to escape. And if you're trying to escape, it definitely helps to have 35% movement speed, right? And the gun damage is not nothing, you know, like, the skill could have not had that gun damage, and it would have still been worth picking up. So the fact that it does have it, it's just a little bonus. So, yeah, I would say it's a really good skill. Two Fang. Every time you fire a gun, you fire twice. So let me demonstrate this. So I fired once. I fired twice. I pulled the trigger once. I'm not sure if you saw that, but I fired twice. Fired once. Yeah, there we go. There, trigger. I'm not sure if you guys are able to tell that, but every time I fire, I'm pulling the trigger once. So sometimes it'll fire twice, which is really good for a weapon like this, because it's semi-automatic. So having Two Fang makes it so I can spam this weapon really quickly and go easy on my trigger finger. My trigger finger is actually being kind of lazy, and my weapon's firing a lot faster than it should be. So personally, I like the skill a lot. If you wanted to argue the skill isn't actually that good, I could see where that argument would come from, but a lot of the weapons I use actually get a lot of benefit from it. So it's like a fire rate buff, and fire rate buffs are not pointless. And it's a fire rate buff in a very interesting way. See, if I just had a straight up fire rate buff, then I wouldn't be able to increase the fire rate of my semi-automatic weapons, right? Because that would still be dependent on my trigger finger. But this makes it so you shoot twice out of every trigger pull. So it's actually kind of better in that sense. Or you could have a weapon that's like bolt action, and this will bypass the bolt action. So yeah, it's a really good skill, I'd say. Death Blossom. So when I was saying you could apply Deathmark in other ways, this is what I meant. So when you're a Deception, you can throw a kunai. Zero's a ninja, so that makes sense. And the kunai actually triggers Deathmark. So here's what the kunai looks like. It's not exactly climactic, but now you can see he has Deathmark on him. You couldn't see what Deathmark looked like before, but yeah, now he takes a lot more damage. So that's a big deal. Because you want to deathmark your enemies. So being able to is a big deal in my opinion. So that concludes the cunning skill tree. He has 2 more, and we're about to get into the bloodshed. So first we start with Killing Blow. By far, in my opinion, the best skill in the entire skill tree. 500% melee damage against enemies that are low. This is the main reason why Zero excuse me. This is the main reason why Zero can even, like, melee at all. Like, melee in this game, at least at the max level, which is where I'm playing at. I'm playing at level 80. Melee at my level is kind of trash, but Killing Blow adds a utility to your melee, right? So you can either melee someone to apply Deathmark to them, or you can melee someone to finish them off. So if I left this guy at 30%, I would gain 500% melee damage. It'd be like if I meleeed them 50 times at once. So that alone makes your melee actually worthwhile in terms of damage. But there are some other skills we're gonna pick up when we get there. So yeah, Killing Blow, really good. Okay, Iron Hand. Increases your melee damage at maximum health. It's okay. It's not great, but I'm gonna pick it up. I'll explain in my gear video. I'm gonna make a video. This is a skill video. I'm gonna make a gear video after this video, and in that video I'll explain more as to why I have this. The skill isn't exactly like super special, but it's not like, you know, it's not nothing, right? So I pick it up. It's better than picking up Be Like Water. Be Like Water is basically the same thing, except it gives you gun damage and melee damage. Now, I like the gun damage aspect, but I don't like how the skill triggers. You have to shoot an enemy and melee them. You have to... So if you shoot an enemy, you get a melee bonus. If you melee an enemy, you get a gun bonus. The idea is supposed to be to follow them up. Like, you know, to do one after the other and to do sort of a hybrid build, right? And I do have a hybrid build, which is, you know, like, if I have a hybrid build, then it should work in my class perfectly. The only problem is I only melee enemies when they're low, and I only shoot enemies when they're full on health. So I'm not getting the gun damage very often, and I don't need the melee, or I do need the melee damage, but I don't need it from this skill, you know? There are other ways of triggering it that are so much easier. Like this is a straight up melee damage buff. I don't need to do anything weird. I don't need to, like, yeah, I don't need it. So, yeah. Kill skill. Grim. So kill skills are unique, actually. I should explain this. Kill skills only trigger after you've killed an enemy. So in order to, like, the idea behind kill skills in general is you kill an enemy and the skill triggers, and they tend to be powerful skills because you have to kill an enemy. So because of that, um, they promote this kind of run and gun play style where you kill someone and you don't want the skill to run out, because kill skills run out in like 7 seconds, I believe, or 5, between there. And it promotes this run and gun play style where you kill someone, trigger your skill, and off of your skill being triggered, you go and kill someone else before it runs out. So you kind of like run through an area a lot quicker if you had a class full of kill skills. So they're pretty cool. Oh, I should explain what the skill itself does. I was about to skip it. Okay, so Grim. Killing an enemy, killing an enemy causes your shields to quickly regenerate and increases your action skill cooldown rate. So this is really good because, for one, Zero doesn't really have many ways of reducing his action skill, which is kind of odd. So yeah, this really helps because it's a 15-second cooldown. But this gives you 7.5% cooldown rate. I'm not sure how good the percentage is, but it's there, right? Among other things I have in my personal build that make it regenerate faster, or cooldown faster. I'm sorry. And it helps your shield regenerate 3.5 per second. Now that's actually really important, because Zero doesn't really have many survival skills, and this is one of his only survival skills. So regenerating your shield might not sound like a big deal, but damage over time is the thing that's going to kill you in this game the most often. So say you have a fire effect on you, right? Your shield is the only thing protecting your health from just melting away to the fire. So being able to regenerate your shield really quickly will make it so that, in between your shield taking down your shield, I'm sorry, the fire damage taking down your shield would be regenerating at the same time, and they'll cancel each other out, kind of, most of the time. Not always, but most of the time. And even in cases where your shield breaks, this will regenerate your shield just enough for the fire to not directly hit your health so severely. So it's a really good survival skill, and it triggers off of kills, and Zero is really good at killing people. I guess all the characters are, but Zero notably is like one of the fastest killers. So yeah. So follow through. This is actually a much better kill skill, for the simple fact that it's like, Grim, I kind of wish was just a flat out skill, but I understand why it's a kill skill. Regenerating shields and action skill cooldown rate is a powerful effect. I just wish he had more, like, straight up survival. But this skill is, like, it follows the philosophy of a kill skill much better in my opinion. So it gives you movement speed. Okay, good. I was talking about innervate making movement speed, good. Movement speed in this game is good because it lets you move from enemy to enemy, area to area. 2 things you're going to be doing a lot. So 40% movement speed just for killing someone, boom. And gun damage. Flat out gun damage. You don't even do anything for it. You kill an enemy. You were going to kill enemies in the first place anyway, so you might as well get some gun damage out of it. And 40% melee damage. Like, with all the melee skills we have, it doesn't hurt to have more melee damage at your disposal. And remember, it's basically free. I mean, we're picking up follow through mainly for the movement speed. The other 2 stats are just there, right? They're just like free. So yeah, it's a really good skill. Oh, and I was saying it follows the philosophy of a kill skill a lot better, because the philosophy of a kill skill is you kill an enemy and it helps you kill other enemies. Grim doesn't really help you kill other enemies, but follow through does, because it gives you damage and movement speed, so you can get to enemies quicker. So yeah. So execute. While I'm in Deception, it makes it so I have like a commando dash. Like, if any of you have ever played what's that game called? Modern Warfare 2? Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, notably. When you would melee in that game and you had the perk commando, you would just like teleport across the screen. It was fucking insane. This is basically that. So if I melee, nothing happens. But if I'm in deception melee, I can't get to him because of the barrier here, right here. But normally you would get to your enemies like insanely quickly. Now if I do it, since I'm out of deception, nothing happens. So yeah, execute is indirectly a movement ability. I use it mainly as a movement ability. If an enemy is like across this, like the map from me, I'll look at him, activate my deception, and just start flying across the map just because of the skill. But that doesn't mean the skill, I don't use it for what it's meant for. I do. You know, I just get behind enemies, trigger my ambush, and yeah, it actually gives you a huge boost to your melee. On top of the fact that Deception gives you 650% melee damage, straight up. So, combine those two, and then if I have Killing Blow active, Iron Hand is always active, and if I have Follow Through active, you can see why an enemy would go down in one melee. And to add to that, here we go, Backstab. 40% melee damage. So this is a big deal, because this only triggers when you melee an enemy in the back, but what are you going to do when you're in Deception? When you become invisible, what are you going to spend your time doing? You're going to spend your time getting behind the enemy. It gives you tons of advantages. It makes it harder for other enemies to hit you, you know, because you have the positional advantage. And it makes the guy you just, like, stabbed in the back, if he doesn't flat out die from being stabbed in the back, then he's going to have to turn around to get to you. Keep in mind, with Execute, if you melee them while having that special dash attack, you actually send enemies flying backwards. So that's just more difficulty on top of just, like, being really good. So even though it's only 40%, excuse me, even though it's only on backstabs, it's 40%, and it triggers a lot more than you would think. So I would say this skill is pretty good. Oh, that, and combined with the fact that ambush and backstab basically have the same requirement, you're getting essentially 60% instead of 40, basically. So yeah, that just makes it all the better. And like I was saying with Deception 650, yeah, every percentage matters. Resurgence. So killing an enemy with a melee attack restores health. The lower health, the more health you receive. This skill would have been really good, but I'll explain why it's bad in my gear video, because, you know, I don't really have I don't have the thing I need to explain why this skill is bad. It's just, even though I was saying Zero doesn't have many survival skills, this is pretty much his only one, and this one. But this isn't really how you want to get your health back. This is a better way of getting your health back, and I have other ways in my class of getting health back. This skill just, it isn't needed, it isn't wanted, and even if I had it, I wouldn't use it that often. Like, not because I wouldn't want to, just because I wouldn't be able to. It's just like, you have to kill an enemy with a melee attack. You don't have to, you know, you don't get the health back from meleeing them, which would be a much better way of doing it. You have to actually kill them. So if you melee someone, and you barely miss out the kill, guess what? That enemy's going to regenerate his health back, and you're not going to get health from that enemy. And if you're trying to get your health back, chances are you're low on health. If you're low on health, and you fail to kill an enemy, well, guess what? Now you're in point blank range with that enemy, and he's going to kill you. So, yeah, this skill isn't that good. Like the wind. You deal increased melee damage and gun damage. Both really good things. In Borderlands, there are two problems you're going to run into. Survival and damage. Zero doesn't really struggle with damage, but other characters typically do. So, you know, having extra damage, really good. But the way this skill triggers is really weird. Like, okay, so while you're moving, so you're always going to be moving, so this skill should always be active. But if you're in Deception, you're not going to be moving. You're going to be standing still because, well, you're invisible and you don't want to miss your shot if you take a gunshot, right? If you're about to shoot someone in the back of the head, you're not going to be moving because you're going to fuck up your shot. That, and, you know, it's just like, the skill's really buggy in the way it works. Like, for example, if I use execute, this skill will not be active. Which you would think it is, because execute is a huge lunge forward, so like, why wouldn't it be active? So you're not getting good use out of the gun damage, you're not getting good use out of the melee damage. You have other skills that like give you better forms of damage. This just isn't what you're looking for. Many must fall. So I'll get back to this one. I am gonna pick it up, but not for the reasons you think. So I'll get back to that one. So for now, let's cover the sniping skill tree. Zero is both a melee character and a sniping character. This skill tree doesn't exactly get your bases covered on either one of those. It has a melee skill, it has a gun skill. It has a gun skill, it has a melee skill. I assume this is supposed to be a melee skill. It's not, but I assume it's supposed to be. This is a gun skill. This is a combination of two. You melee enemies, and they take 80% more damage. But it also makes it so that damage that they take, you can also apply to guns, right? This, sure, it gives you that gun damage, so I guess you could assume it's supposed to be a gun skill, but it also gives you movement speed, which helps melee. And it gives you regeneration for your health, which is just flat out good. So no matter if you were running a sniping skill, or a sniping class or a melee class, you would pick this up either way. This, I have no idea where the hell it comes from, the ideology. I love the skill, don't get me wrong, but it has nothing to do with anything, so it's just a skill that's here, I guess. It's a filler skill. And then kunai. Kunai makes it so you can trigger death mark from a range, which I would assume benefits better on sniping, but it's actually not bad for melee either. If you're running a melee build, sometimes you don't want to melee them until you get behind them. And once you're behind them, you can just throw one kunai at them, or you can kunai other enemies too, so you can apply death mark to multiple targets. So kunai is just like this skill tree, whether you're a sniper or you're a melee player, you're gonna go down this skill tree either way. And why am I covering all this? Well, this is your sniper skill tree, and Zero is a sniping character, but me myself, I'm not a sniping player. Like, I run snipers, of course. I have snipers. I have a couple, but I'm not like basing my entire playstyle off of it. So a lot of the skills I'm gonna pick up aren't sniper specific. They're just gun specific. So critical hits. Oh yeah, I also have quite a few skill points set up in the melee skill tree. So it'd be fair to assume that like I'm gonna make a melee build, but this build isn't quite a melee build or a sniping build. It's kind of a hybrid of the two. So yeah. So headshot. Deal 20% increased critical hit damage. This is a shooting game. You know, where do you want to hit the enemy? Well, of course, in the head. Dealing 20% more? Really good. There's not anything really to say about that. Dealing double damage is pretty good. On top of 20%, makes it even better. Optics. This skill is trash, and you can pause the video and read this skill, but trust me when I say, you don't want this skill. This skill is a waste of skill points. It doesn't fucking matter, and it basically does nothing. So, yeah. Moving on. Kill skill. So, like Grim and follow through, you have to, you know, you have to kill an enemy to trigger these, but I think killer, it makes a lot of sense, right? So, you gain critical hit damage and reload speed after you kill an enemy. The critical hit damage helps you kill other enemies. That on top of the fact that we're personally going to have follow through and Grim active after killing an enemy. We're going to have our movement speed and our gun damage. Gun damage? So, gun damage and critical hits actually stack together really well. So here's the way you should think about it, right? So your gun does 100 damage, let's just say. Now you're adding 30% gun damage to your gun. So your gun does 130 damage. But without the 30%, your gun's just doing a flat out 100 damage. You get a headshot, that's double damage, right? So your gun does 200 damage. But with the 30%, your gun's doing 130. Then you get a headshot, 260, because 130 times 2 is 260. Now, add 20%, and this is 50%, so that's 70%. So your gun that was doing 100 damage, add the 20%, and from this skill, and from deception, and all kinds of things, right? You can see how the damage starts ramping up. So your gun that was doing 100 damage is now doing 30% on top of that, 130, 20% extra gun damage, or critical hit damage, I'm sorry, from this. So let's just pretend nothing else was active except follow through and headshot. So your gun that was doing 130 now does, 280, just off of those two skills alone. So you can see how combining headshot damage and, or I say headshot damage, critical hit damage. Critical hits are headshots, except there are some enemies in this game that don't have heads, so they just call it critical hit damage because they have different weak spots. So yeah. So combining critical hit damage and gun damage together is it's more than just, gun damage plus headshot damage. That's kind of what I was doing in my head right now, but it's more than just that. It's more like gun damage times headshot damage, So it's a big deal. And the reload speed, well, when is your gun gonna be not reloaded? After you kill an enemy, You just wasted a few bullets to waste the bad guy. Your gun needs to reload. Hopefully you've killed them in one magazine, so your kill skill should activate. Your gun's low on its magazine, you reload. So having the reload buff after you've killed an enemy makes a lot of sense, actually. So yeah, it makes sense. And combined with the fact that we have the 25% here, off of these two skills alone, I'm now reloading twice as fast as I normally would. Flat out. Nothing even included in that. Just double the reload speed. Who doesn't like that? So, precision. Increases your accuracy with all gun types. Zero's the only character in the game to have a skill like this. I have no idea why. But, yeah, increasing your weapon accuracy. So now, my weapon does, or it has better accuracy. It's kind of hard to tell, but my weapons are more accurate, so just take my word for it. The skill's good, because it's the only one of its kind in this game. In other Borderlands games, they have more skills that are like this, but Zero was kind of the precursor. And accuracy is really good for all kinds of weapons, notably shotguns though. Snipers, I say, are the only real class that doesn't care about accuracy, because, well, snipers are just, they're snipers, right? They're pinpoint. So why do you need more accuracy on a sniper? That's why I think it's kind of weird that they put this in a sniping skill tree, but I mainly use other kinds of weapons, so I benefit a lot from this. And I said mainly shotguns benefit from it, because what's a shotgun's main, problem, right? It shoots multiple projectiles, but it spreads them out. This closes in that kind of circle where it'll spread out. So it's a big deal. Okay. So, one shot, one kill. So, the first shot from a fully loaded magazine deals increased damage. 60% increased damage. So, I have a lot of weapons that have small magazines, and that's 60% off the first shot. And this is a form of damage that you can control. This isn't oh, you need to get a headshot, which, don't get me wrong, you can control that too, but sometimes enemies move in weird ways, sometimes you miss the headshot, whatever. But this, a fully loaded magazine. If you're in deception, then you're putting everything into one shot. This helps, right? Because it puts that 60% into your one shot. And say you weren't reloaded, right? How hard is it for me to just be like, oh, enemies are around me. Okay, now I'm gonna reload. My gun has bullets. Okay, excuse me. Let's wait for my deception to come back. But my point is, like, say I'm surrounded by enemies, right? I'm killing a bunch of dudes, blah blah blah. You know, a bunch of things are happening, right? So my gun needs to reload because I don't have my first shot for first kill. Now I can just reload while in deception, line up the shot, boom, and I get a ton of damage off. So yeah, the skill is just flat out good. You can control when you get that damage bonus, and it's a huge damage bonus. Plus, there's one particular weapon that benefits a lot from this gun, this skill. So yeah, that's a big deal. So Boar. This skill is kind of busted, to put it simply. This skill makes it so your shots have a piercing effect. So let's say there are two enemies lined up like dominoes, right? Or let's just, I'll explain it through dominoes. Let's say dominoes are your enemy, and dominoes line up, right? If you shoot one domino, now ignoring the fact that dominoes fall over and stuff, imagine a bullet piercing through dominoes, right? Normally in this game, each your bullet, you know, after it hits an enemy, it stops. So imagine a bullet hitting a domino, and it stops, right? Your damage has been dealt to the domino, and that's it. But now imagine your bullet pierces that domino, and goes through it, and to the domino behind it, and the domino behind that one, and the domino behind that one, and it just keeps going, right? So that's a lot of damage you're doing off of one bullet. And if that's all Boar did, it would still be a really good skill. But that's not all Boar does. It makes it so every time the bullet pierces, it does 100 times extra damage to the enemy behind it. Or in our analogy, the domino behind it. So now imagine an infinite row of dominoes. And you fire one bullet, now you're getting an infinite amount of damage just off of one skill. Now, I know that kind of seems unlikely. Like, you know, that wouldn't really happen in a real gunfight, right? Trust me, it's really easy. Like, let's say there's an enemy, like, right there, right? How hard is it for me to just throw deception right here, and then, like, line myself up with the enemies, right? So, there's an enemy right there, and I'm standing right here, okay? I just throw deception. Now they're... Where the fuck is my decoy? Okay, well, they would be distracted by my decoy. And then I just line up, and boom. Now I'm hitting both enemies, right? I'm not explaining it very well. My point is, if you have to line up your enemies, it's not that hard. Like, especially with Zero. Zero can be wherever the hell he wants on the map, so... You know, let me find two human targets. Okay, yeah, see? These two guys, how am I going to line them up? I throw deception, and then I line them up like this. Okay, well that guy ran off, because he sucks. Anyway, you get my point. If you have to, you can line up your enemies very easily and very quickly. Oh, and Boar actually has one extra benefit. So, you know, I hope you guys are fans of Naruto, because I'm about to make a Naruto reference, right? So, you know Neji, the guy with the Byakugan, the guy with the eyes? Yeah, he can see the enemy's weak spots, right? Now, because of Boar, I can see the enemy's weak spot. Now, with this guy, it's pretty easy to see. Like, he's a human target. You know, of course his head is the weak spot. By the way, poor guy. He's target practice. And he's immortal, too, so he can just take an infinite amount of punishment. But, anyway. So this actually makes it so if you're fighting a new enemy and you have no idea where his critical hit is, this, you know, this just makes it easy to see your enemy's weak point. And, like, you know, I've been playing this game for a long time, right? So I already know where all my enemy's weak points are. But, you know, even for a player like me, it's a big deal because let's say there are explosions going on everywhere, you might not even be able to see the target, right? But now, it's going to be highlighted. I mean, like, you know, look at that. Like, You know, even if he's at the corner of my eye, I can see exactly where he is. And enemies get highlighted blue from the deception skill, so that's a big deal. Because some enemies can go invisible, but this will still highlight them. And Vor will point out their weak spot. So this basically gives you the Byaku gun. It's just a really good skill, flat out. It does all that for one skill point. So yeah, big deal. So I have one skill point left over. Where am I going to put this last skill? Well, I said I was going to talk about Many Must Fall. And I am. The only reason I'm picking up this skill is because I have one skill point left, and everything looks green, right? All the skills only look green if they've all been completed. That's pretty much the only reason I picked this up. But, actually, the skill is pretty good. It's worth picking up on its own. So what does it do? If you kill an enemy while you're in deception, normally your deception would end. But if you pick up this skill, specifically with a melee attack, by the way, you have to kill him with a melee attack. And if you do, the skill will drop another decoy. And if you're good enough, you can actually, like, now let's imagine a domino analogy again, right? So let's say each of these squares is a domino, like the darker squares. If I had Many Must Fall, I can melee one, and my decoy will spawn. I melee a different one, and a different decoy will spawn. I melee this one, and a different decoy will spawn. And you'll see the chain reaction I'm talking about. So, Many Must Fall is actually really good. The only problem with it is, at max level, enemies are really hard to kill with a melee attack. That's the only problem with it. But, you know, we have it, so it's cool. Anyway, we don't have any more skill points, so our skill build is complete. But I'm going to finish talking about the rest of the skill tree. So, if maybe you play Borderlands 2 at home, and you have a 0, and you just don't know how to build them, I'll explain the good points and the bad points of the rest of these skills. So, velocity. Increases bullet speed, gun damage, and critical hit with all guns. This sounds amazing, right? You know, it's just flat out gun damage, flat out critical hit damage, and the bullet speed you kind of get for free. Well, the bullet speed is the reason I'm not picking this up. See, this skill is good, okay? And if you're using normal weapons, I would say pick this up. But, actually I can show this with this weapon. So, you see these extra projectiles that are coming out of my weapon? Because if I pick up velocity, the bullet speed would be a lot faster, and those secondary projectiles I'm getting, so, you know, here's a normal bullet, right? No extra projectiles, but if I fire long range, I get extra projectiles. If I get velocity, those extra projectiles will spawn really, really far away, which means this will become a really long range weapon. And this is my favorite weapon in the game, so I don't really want to do that. There are other weapons that actually get negatively affected by bullet speed. That's not to say bullet speed is always a bad thing. Bullet speed is a good thing too, right? Because, like, say this guy's moving really quickly and I just can't hit him, right? Like, I just can't hit him, I'm trash, whatever. Bullet speed actually helps because every bullet in this game is a projectile. So being able to increase your projectile speed will make it so instead of leading your target, you can actually aim at them directly. And if you have fast enough bullet speed, you'll hit them every time. So, velocity is a really good skill. It's just not good with the weapons that I'm personally using. So, I'm not picking it up. But, if you're not using weapons that are negatively affected by velocity, hell, even if you are, if the negative effect isn't bad enough, then I would still consider picking the skill up. Okay, so, kill confirm. Aiming down your sights grants you increased critical hit damage. So this is kind of a trap. Like, yes, it gives you a lot of critical hit damage. The problem with it is you have to be aimed down sights, and aiming down sights makes it so you move slower. This gun notably has a scope, which makes it even worse for that skill. So yeah, you don't want to be walking slowly, right? Like, it's a battlefield. So that means, like, are you going to be aiming? Yeah, of course you're going to be aiming a lot of the time. But you're going to be aiming and moving, right? You aim, kill a target, move. Aim, kill a target, move. Right? That's going to be your whole thing. This gives you damage the longer you aim. So, yeah, you could sit there. Yeah, your damage will be stacking up, but it stacks up to a limit, which is kind of bullshit because it doesn't say that on the card, I don't think. Actually, it does, yeah. Critical hit damage 8% if I put 1 point into it. If you put 5 points into it, 5 times 8, 40%. 40% extra critical hit damage? Sure, that's fine. The problem is you have to wait the full duration, and it takes a long ass time. Like, the skill sucks. Like, it would have been good. It's just the way it works sucks. So let's move on from that. At one with the gun. Greatly improves your accuracy with sniper rifles when shooting from the hip. So your hip fire is good with snipers, which is really good actually, because snipers aren't very good at close range. This makes it so snipers are usable at close range. And it increases your reload speed and magazine size. Snipers have pretty low magazine sizes, so that magazine size is actually a big deal. And the reload speed, I mean, you have killer, and you have fast hands, and like normally I would say you have enough reload speed, but reload speed is one of those stats where like if you just keep maxing it, it's kind of like damage, right? Like you can never have too much damage, well you can never have too much reload speed. So, but this only applies to snipers. All these great stats only apply to snipers, and I'm not using snipers. Plus, I would have to go really far down the skill tree to pick this up, and as you can see, I'm out of skill points, so I don't pick this up. So what's Zero's ultimate sniper skill? Well, actually, during my playthrough, you may see me take my points out of the skill tree and put points into the skill tree so I can pick this skill up. This skill actually isn't that bad. In fact, I would say this skill is better than this skill. Excuse the audio quality difference. I had to re-record this later in the day because, you know, the audio got a little messed up. Anyway, so critical ascension. You get headshots, you do more damage, but you can only use snipers, and you can only gain so much damage. Not that you'll ever reach the max amount anyway, but yeah, it's a really good skill, really simple. And if you climb a ladder, you'll lose all the stacks that you gain off of critical ascension. Same if you swap to a weapon that isn't a sniper, or a couple of other weird issues with it. So it's not exactly made with the game in mind. It was just kind of like given to Zero, I feel. So it's not a very good skill in my opinion, but if you're going to be sniping, it's a great skill. And like, I say it's not a good skill in my opinion because it's too difficult to use, a lot like Zero himself. Zero's a really hard character to use, but we're going to be using him, and hopefully to good effect. And yeah, so next time I'm going to be showing off my gear and my setup for what I use to mostly play through the game. We're still not going to be shooting anything for maybe the gear in a video after that, or maybe after the gear I'll do a exhibition of my character, and you know, you'll be able to see what my character actually plays like when I'm shooting at stuff. And then we'll get to the actual questing. Sorry it's taking so long, but hopefully you guys have enough patience, and hopefully the videos after will be a lot more fun. And yeah, have a good one. Till next time.